Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Welcome to another exciting session from Palo Alto Networks about 11.0 and NOAA. So we'll talk about a few things here. I'll start with saying why were we here, like few things about the past, how the product got here, and then we'll walk you through the cycles that is like providing excellent benefit to our customers in terms of preventing any cyber threats, preventing ransomware, preventing C2 attacks, a lot of exciting stuff that's part of 11.0 NOAA. So these are the speakers today. As Katie mentioned, I'll be doing the presentation part, slides and stuff. And then Almas is our principal technical marketing engineer. She'll walk us through an exciting demo of the whole entire talk we talk about in 11.0, followed by Afonso, who'll talk about another exciting technology, which is AI Ops, and we'll show a demo over there as well. So with that, let's get started. So first of all, before we go into this slide, let's set some context. If you look at the firewall maybe 10 years back, right, and the attacks that were 10 years back, they're pretty simple. Somebody would write an attack maybe in 6 months or 1 year, and then the vendors will come up with a signature to prevent those attacks, and that's about it, right? And the attacks by themselves were not that sophisticated anyways. We're not talking about attacks that were as a service, for example, ransomware as a service or phishing as a service. All those things were not there in the back. And with the new architectures in the modern cloud architectures, it's very, very easy for adversaries to go and launch servers, launch compute within minutes, and start attacking, networks on the fly. So again, getting back to the slide, back then, it was all about static signatures to prevent threats. And even then, Palo Alto Networks was the leader in terms of introducing an architecture which was single pass architecture. What it used to do is that you could actually process multiple streams together. For example, I can start processing any URL threats. I can start processing threat prevention attacks and things like that all in once in one parallel system. So at the end, you would have a firewall, Palo Alto firewalls, that you could load like multiple or millions of signatures in it. And then you can start stopping all these different attacks that would come in at a regular cadence, or maybe 6 months or 1 year, right? But what we see now is that the attack surface has changed drastically. And I'll give you some examples and just to figure out how people are using AI and ML to actually accelerate those attacks. So what we're seeing is that the attacks are now more like nationwide state level attacks that we see a lot. Then secondly, the complexity of the attacks is also much more. There are people offering these attacks as a service, which means they're actually putting time and cycles to not just create a standard malware attack, but actually follow through the whole cycle of launching that attack and getting data and all that stuff for multiple networks. And with the cloud and hybrid environments, it's actually getting more complexity. I'm sure most of you have computes on-prem as well as cloud, as well as different places, right? How do you actually create or prevent that attack surface? Because naturally, the more compute you have, which is the requirement today, the attack surface also gets greater and greater, right? So we definitely need an advanced technique that goes and stops all these modern attacks. And the last thing is operational complexity. Now, you could actually go and deploy multi-vendor technologies to prevent some of these attacks, but it becomes very, very operationally challenged. Not just the deployment part of it, but the second thing is to be up to date all the time to stop these attacks. Because if you look at some of the modern architectures like zero trust, which is a big thing, even a push from government, they also talk about the same thing. For example, zero trust has two parts. First of all, make sure that everybody gets the same treatment before they connect to the network. And secondly, once they're on the network, how do you actually make sure that their security posture is always in place, right? That's where if it's very high operational complexity to roll out solutions, it becomes practically less secure because you won't have cycles to go and update all the time, right? So with that, we're excited to introduce our latest release, PanOS 11.0, called NOAA. And these are some of the key features that are part of the NOAA. And we'll walk through these features as we go through. And towards the end, I'll show you the whole kitchen sink as well. That has a list of other features that are part of NOAA as well. Let's start with advanced WildFire. Now, what we're seeing is that the new technology that we've introduced is really using AI and ML. And what it does is that just by introducing that technology, we're seeing 26% more zero-day attack prevention compared to our own release that we put last time, right? And when I say 0 day, these are the attacks that are never seen by anybody. So if you go to, let's say, Virus Total and all these different websites where you can get the up-to-date list of the malware and attacks that are happening, you won't see these attacks that are captured by our technology, right? And I'll show you some examples of what we saw, and we couldn't see any prevention for those attacks for a number of days on these different websites. Second thing, what's important is advanced threat prevention. What we're seeing is that, especially for the past 2 years, the C2 attack model is on the rise. So people would encrypt data, encrypt transactions from command channel, and they'll just start attacking channel, right? It becomes very, very hard to prevent these attacks. And I'm sure you all of you have heard about tools, for example, Cobalt Strike, and other tools which are similar to Cobalt Strike, for example, Pentest or Invigate or Metasploit and all these different products, right? What they do is that they would base in code 64, double encrypt it, and to launch a C2 attack, which becomes very, very hard to detect and stop, right? So we'll talk about how we actually prevent these technologies in our advanced threat prevention as we go to those slides. Web proxy, that's another exciting one. We see proxies all the time, which is basically one method of protecting network. But the deployment of proxy is also very complex if you take like a traditional proxy. And when you double click into proxy, proxy should be flexible. You should be able to deploy it in a transparent mode, or maybe in an explicit mode where you actually tie in the authentication piece with it. So we'll talk about how our architecture simplifies deployment of web proxy, where we basically enable it on the firewall without minimal network changes, right? And it becomes very easy to just roll out all these changes as we go through. Next-gen CASB. As we see that with the rise of SaaS application, there are many different use cases where you could have different kind of application on the network. How do you actually make sure that these applications are not shadow IT application? These are not rogue applications, right? So it's very, very important to detect all these applications and be able to author a policy that how would you like to treat these different applications. For example, there could be crown jewel application. There could be application which are just on the network, but you still need to enable them for some productivity. So can you create these different buckets and start protecting customers with all this application? Last but not the least, AIOps. This is something that I'm super excited about. It actually offers the ability to our customers to proactively manage configuration, avoid misconfiguration, and then predict if there could be any network outage if your security posture is not in place, right? And then kind of go back and author you or offer you policies which are aligned with best practices. So Afonso will walk us through the demo of AIOps, and you'll get to see all this in action. Last but not the least on the slide, we're excited to introduce 5 new hardware, which are actually giving 5 times more performance than their own previous generation, just part of NOAA. And the other thing is you'll see some of the form factors, for example, the small hardware 415, 445, they now come with the fiber port and a PoE port. So for small branch deployment, it is a perfect hardware to go and deploy. And we'll walk you through these hardware as well. All right, so let's walk through what has been the development, what has been the commitment, what has been the innovation that we've been offering to our customers. I'll start with simple hardware in PAN-OS, and then we'll lead into security services. So if you look at 3 years ago, we introduced third gen hardware, very powerful hardware. You could load millions of signatures in it, came with single pass architecture, and then it was amazing in terms of preventing security threats back then. Then we start introducing the virtual form factors, which is tremendously used in a lot of architectures. For example, your private cloud, especially, where we can work with the hypervisor layer and offer the same level of security. Then we start introducing cloud delivered NGFW, which is a complete managed service. So you can turn on, sign up for the service, and within minutes, you can start addressing your mobile user use case. They can connect and get the same level of security. And at the end, if we talk about PAN-OS features, it has been a continuous innovation cycle. For example, giving our customers the ability to write zero trust policies based on enhanced application ID, user ID, and also preventing any threat, which is something, for example, if your user is mistakenly submitting corporate credentials on a phished website, we would detect it's a phished website and we'll stop submission of those credentials. So super advanced technologies on PAN-OS features as well. Let's see what happened in between. So we actually started introducing our first inline machine learning next-gen firewall. And this was a huge innovation. Just by introducing these boxes, we were able to prevent 95% of unknown attacks. Because what's been happening in the industry is that an attacker, or every regular Jew, as I call them, would pick up a known malware. They'll change the hash value of that malware and come back and attack you. If you're using standard signatures without any ML, the box will not detect it because it's not matching the hash value. So what we introduce for our customers is that the box will be able, or our platform will be able to detect any variations of a known malware. For example, that practically becomes an unknown malware. And then we're able to stop them on the box itself, on the hardware itself, by being inline. So this technology was immensely useful, especially during the last 2 years as we rolled it out. We also started introducing native firewalls. For example, you can go and deploy firewalls for all these clouds, right? When I say deploy these firewalls, for example, with AWS, we have Cloud NGFW. And what it does is that it can work with the native AWS tools, the native reporting, the native routing, and even the native interface to configure the firewall. So that's a huge benefit for our customers. It just blends it automatically to the cloud and NGFW use cases. 5G security, absolutely, we can talk about all day of the innovations we have in 5G security, but a lot of patents that came out of it. So definitely I'll touch a little bit on that as well. And then we started introducing real-time prevention of highly evasive C2 attacks. For example, patient zero, what I just mentioned in the last slide. So if somebody is using Cobalt Strike and stuff like that to base encode it, we're able to detect it and stop these attacks runtime, even if it's day zero attack, right? And at the end, when you look at the PanOS features, we introduced SaaS app security, we introduced Cloud INT Engine, which is a huge step forward in terms of starting with zero trust for identity. And that's where a lot of customers are starting as well. And then also the whole process of decryption, we simplified it. Decryption is something that is not easy to roll out. That's why we introduced standard flow with baked in configuration that you can actually go and roll out decryption within 10 minutes on the network, right? All right, what do we have today? So we introduced the fourth gen machine learning platform, which is now solving these advanced security needs for branch and critical environments. And I'll talk about these hardware as I go through. Basically, you're getting tons and tons of compute with lower form factor, which is huge for our customers, right? AI ops, again, we touched upon it, but we'll talk more about it, and Alfonso will show the demo. And then I'll talk a bit about web proxy for NGW that we introduced for both explicit as well as transparent proxy and the architecture that goes behind it. Okay, what are the innovations on the security side of things? So as you know, 2 years ago, we had these services, TP, threat prevention, URL filtering, WildFire, DNS security, and Global Protect, which is a client to connect forward. And now what we did is that it started enhancing these services to advanced services. And I'll walk you through very clearly that what is a threat prevention and what is an advanced threat prevention comes with it. But on a very high level, if you're looking to stop uh, patient zero attacks, or attacks that have not been seen by anybody by using machine learning, AI, and ML, then you would plug in an advanced technique. But for any other standard attacks, which are based on signatures, and even the stuff that are advanced techniques, for example, advanced TP and URL catches, eventually we will make a signature out of it and push it back to the boxes. So eventually get the signature right. But the real-time stopping of these malware, that's where the advanced services really shine, and we'll go through those architectures. And then we also introduced DLP, which is a completely enterprise level DLP. And then we also introduced the IoT solution, which comes with not just detection of IoT devices, but also coming back and suggesting you policies for those IoT devices. For example, if my printer is now sending traffic to a web host somewhere, we'll detect it. We'll come back and recommend you a policy to stop that, right? So we'll touch upon that in a bit as well. And in the end, the whole CDSS model for SASE, for hardware, it just bridges the gap. The Prisma Access that we talked about, it offers all these services natively managed by Palo Alto to our customers. And then when you start adding XDR and CSPM technologies, it covers the whole security space for our customers. All right, so today we'll talk about these four advanced services, and I'll compare them with the traditional services that we have. We'll go through those steps. And then we'll focus on advanced WildFire, we'll focus on advanced threat prevention, and get to see all of this action from Almas and demos, and we'll walk through that. Okay. All right. So before I deep dive into these technologies, what's important to understand is that Palo Alto Networks is offering a complete network security platform for our customers. When I say platform, if you look towards the bottom, all the hardware firewalls, the software firewalls, the native cloud firewalls, and even the SASE, they're offering the same level of security. So if you look at these advanced services, all these platforms are plugged into these advanced services, and these advanced services are offered via the cloud. So Palo Alto manages them. We make sure it has the latest detection that our customer needs for security, and offer that. In terms of management, the whole architecture could be managed by a single management console, which is Panorama, right? And through Panorama, you can actually go and using the same Panorama, you can basically manage the SASE as well as the hardware or software firewall things. It becomes very easy for customers to deploy that, right? And towards the northbound, you'll see that as the workload or as the users are accessing these workloads on internet, your private DCO data center, your public cloud, even SaaS application, the same security platform can offer the top-notch security that we discussed. And I'll deep dive into these security details. Okay, so with that said, I'll walk you through a few things. Uh, First of all, again, just to recap, it's basically a best-in-class security for everything we offer. And you'll see as I go through the slides, the detection that we have and everything. It's basically an and approach. So we're offering this best-class security with the platform approach. And you can see that this platform works for your hybrid deployment or cloud-native deployment or even private data center. Any architecture you have, the same architecture will work through in terms of offering security across the board. Okay, so what's important for our customers is to really look at the zero trust innovation, right? As I showed you the hardware and the whole architecture and the platform, the zero trust is blended into that architecture. I mean, even if I go 10 years back, where Palo Alto was a pioneer in terms of introducing user ID, that's what zero trust, because we're offering our customers the ability to author context-based policies based on users and application, right? And then as we grow the security landscape, as we look at different vectors, everything is part of the same policy. So I can author this policy with user, application, devices, SaaS security, and bunch more with the same simple left to right policy in plain English, right? So with that, it's very easy for customers to stop, evasive threats and patient zero in real time. And I'll show you some examples. How do we stop it by using AI/ML? And again, if you're looking to implement zero trust, we have all the foundation components that makes it happen for a customer. There are few services that we include as part of the product. For example, Cloud ID Engine, where you're able to plug in multiple IDPs or IAMs with our architecture and implement security policies based on users and devices, right? So definitely you're getting a lot of in return on investment or your security appliances. Okay, let's deep dive into a couple of things. We'll talk about WildFire and advanced WildFire and how these services are offering the prevention that we talked about. So first of all, why is this important? We're seeing a rise of as a service offering. So you'll see these malware campaigns all across the board. We're seeing 1,100 new threat actors and 700 new malware families just in 2021. We have a full research arm, which is Unit 42, which actually goes and looks at these things. And then we see a lot of stuff that's happening out there. And then if you look at just the techniques they're using modern techniques, and I'll show you some of these techniques that in the next slide. But we're able to offer these advanced prevention to our customers to stop these evasive attacks, which are completely benign. So first of all, in WildFire, if you look at this, the thing that I'm super excited about is that we can actually go and look into in-memory analysis. So if you have some advanced adversaries, instead of just transferring files from a client to a server, they will try to get into the hypervisor layer and stay in the hypervisor layer. So if the file never goes across the network, a traditional firewall will never be able to catch it because they're not receiving any packets, right? And that's what they're doing. They're actually sitting inside your memory hypervisor layer and launching these attacks all there, right? So with our latest technology, the advanced WildFire that I talked about, we're able to look at your memory. We're able to take snapshots like pretty often, and then we're able to compare what's changing in the memory. For example, if very simple visual you can see on this slide is that out of these four snapshots of memory, we see that the second snapshot has something different. And when we double click on that, we can see there's a malware running in the memory for that time, right? So we're able to detect that, we're able to stop that by using in-memory analysis. And just by this technology, we're seeing like 26% increase in prevention of very, very sophisticated, highly evasive malware that are defeating these traditional sandboxes all the time, right? Now, apart from that, if you look at the other features of WildFire, it comes with a lot more intelligence. For example, stealth mode. If the virus is just paused for some time, then after some time they come back and launch it at a time where there's not being monitored that effectively. So we have those detections. We can look at your config files. We can look at your fingerprinting. We can automate the unpacking of these boxes, and then we can also do emulation, and then if anything is dependent on the memory, you can catch all of that, right? So again, very advanced technology in terms of stopping these malware that are running in today's world. Now, I get this question all the time: what is the difference between a wildfire and an advanced wildfire, right? So to keep it simple, anything that is super evasive, anything which is 0 day, which is targeted by these as a service threat actors, the advanced wildfire will be able to stop them because it comes with a lot of AI and ML techniques which are able to look at these, be able to do in-memory analysis and come back and stop these files, right? But apart from that, there's a lot of things that is offered by standard WildFire. For example, we have 99% detection of known and unknown malware just with this technology. The whole signatures update is less than 10 seconds. So if something goes through and your box doesn't have a signature, we'll come back and push the signature within 10 seconds, which results in like 99% efficacy in terms of stopping these attacks, right? And then if you compare with the industry largest database, our database is 28 times larger than any threat intelligence database that's out there, right? And that's due to the fact that we have a full research arm, which is Unit 42, and that does a lot of detection across the globe to come back and give new signatures, right? Now, on the compliance side, also you can see that we have 10 regional clouds to meet any sovereignty and needs from customers. We have 17 international certifications, which are all listed on our websites. And then we have a global network of 85,000 plus customers, which are providing like cloud source data threat intelligence. So the beauty get is that when these services are in the cloud, any of our customers that sees that attack, they're able to stop that attack. That is naturally offered to all of our other customers because the service is offered from the cloud, right? That's why the efficacy and the round trip times of stopping an attack is very, very quick for our customers. Oh, a couple of things I'll say for the advanced wildfire. Yes, it's a whole new patent technique. So you'll see that a lot of patent that are part of that. Then also the speed and scale without causing any business interruption is there. Literally, in some cases, it's less than 100 millisecond of round trip time for a verdict to come back and apply detection for these different attacks. Okay. Now let's get into threat prevention, right? We talked about WildFire, which is basically looking at the data and the files going through. But what about these new adversaries which are using C2 attack channels? So in that case, we're offering we'll come back and stop any of these 0 day attacks within 15 minutes, and that is being very openly. But what I see in the network is it's a lot quicker than that. So how do we do that? First of all, let's look at the landscape again. You'll see that the rise into these vulnerabilities are twice more as compared to year of year in 0 day vulnerabilities that are exploited by adversaries network. Secondly, if you look at the ransomware attack that's been going on, again, huge rise on ransomware cases where they would come back and attack your network, and then pretty much the ransomware, you have to work with them to get out of it. And the last thing is that the evasive C2 attacks is on the rise as well. And we talked about some attack. For example, Cobalt Strike is one, but what about Metasploit? What about Detectify? What about Beagle Security? All these different things which are similar to Cobalt Strike. So these tools used to be red team tools, which are not even available to security vendors, but due to some source code leak for the last in a couple of years, especially like Cobalt Strike, is now available to everybody. So they can base encrypt 64 packets and then come back and launch attacks. Okay. So let's look at the advanced IPS that we have. Pretty much, if you look at the architecture, this is offered by Palo Alto as a service. So it works across any platform. We talked about the security platform use case. So you can make it work with NGFW, both hardware and virtual firewall cases, as well as Prisma access. Now, what's happening here is that if there's a zero-day attack comes in, our appliances, our security platform is in line to the traffic, which means that if something comes in which is unknown, we'll stop that in line. We'll not let the packet go through unless and until we get the verdict. And that's where within 100 millisecond or less, we'll get the verdict back from our cloud service, which is advanced threat prevention. And then we'll be able to tell the platform, should the packet go through or should it be stopped or what should happen, right? That's why it's very, very powerful in terms of stopping completely net new zero-day attacks, evasive, which have not been seen by anybody, right? So by introducing this technology just in Nebula, which is the release before, we're able to see 96% prevention of web-based Cobalt Strike C2. I don't think any other vendor can claim it, but this is very, very high efficacy in terms of stopping, Cobalt Strike kind of attacks, completely evasive C2 attacks, right? And then with our latest technology, we're even seeing 90% prevention of SQL attacks or injection attacks, as we call it, right? And that's on the rise. We'll see a lot of attacks they're using the same old technology of injection, but with new various techniques to just get that code inside your platform, right? Inside your architecture, right? So yeah, that's a new thing we're excited to launch about in Nova, which is the ability to stop any SQL injection or any injection attacks that are out there, right? And if you look at the injection attacks, they're a bit more. For example, we're not just saying SQL, it could be C2, it could be command injection, it could be vulnerabilities, it could be any zero-day threat that could be offered by C2, which could be HTTP, HTTP based SSL, unknown UDP, or unknown TCP attacks that we go through, right? So yeah, I would recommend to check this out in Nova, but a huge benefit for customers to start preventing these attacks. Okay, let's do a quick comparison of what's the difference between threat prevention and advanced threat prevention. As we said earlier, anything that is signature based would be able to be handled by standard threat prevention techniques, right? So it is basically best in class IPS platform. We can predict performance by using single pass architecture because we can process all of these different various attacks in parallel. So URL, DNS security, WildFire, threat prevention could be all processed in parallel. And then the content update is on a very short notice. For example, you could get it daily or you get it weekly, which means you're pretty much protected by these attacks. But if you're looking to stop these evasive attacks or complete zero-day exploits, runtime, for example, if nobody has seen these attacks, just stop it, right? Because we can determine that it's a vulnerability. That's where the advanced threat prevention comes in, which is offered as a cloud service, where we're using inline deep learning analysis, and we're sitting inline. As the packet goes through, we'll stop it, send it to the cloud, get the verdict, and come back and stop it. So again, as we said earlier, evasive C2, Cobalt Strike, zero-day exploits could all be prevented through these technologies. And this is important as well because there's a lot of patent that is authored by Palo Alto Networks, which are designed for machine learning and deep learning models, which are very, very exciting for customers. And deep learning is something that takes a lot of compute and a lot of data. For example, if I tell maybe 20 people to go write a number 9, they would all write it very differently, right? A human eye can go and detect it because we have seen all the variants of number 9 throughout our lifespan, right? But for a program, for a code, for an AI ML to kick in and detect it, you need tons and tons of data. You need to know all the variants of number 9, right? And we have data. Like, for example, we've been in the WildFire business for 10 plus years, and we have a full research unit, 42 arm. That's why our threat database is 26 times more than compared to any other. So data is not a problem. The second thing we wanted to solve for customers was the compute. So instead of pushing our customers for bigger and fatter boxes, we came up with that architecture that I showed in the previous slide, that we can process a lot of this compute, AI and ML, with tons and tons of data in the cloud. So as something comes in which is not detectable, we can get a verdict back from the cloud within 100 millisecond and come back and force that access, right? So again, this whole deep learning model is very exciting in terms of security space and how we implement that. Okay, let's talk about patient zero. So in this case, we're talking about Unit 4U, the research arm. We talked about inline machine learning, which is offered across advanced TP, advanced WildFire, advanced URL, as well as DNS security. And look at the numbers are fascinating. Our customers are getting top-notch security compared to anything out there in the market, right? And then towards the right, this is all driven by cloud-driven machine models. So if you look at the SaaS security, we have the APIs for to work with the SaaS application, and we can offer that top-notch security. We also offer DLP for any application that is non-SaaS living on your network. We can also work with those applications and provide a lot of coverage for these applications, right? For example, what if you take a picture of data and send it across? Can we protect it, right? Things like that. And then IoT security. Again, IoT security these days is not just about profiling a device and telling, yes, it's a MacBook versus an iPad, and then make a decision based on that policy. It's more about how that device is behaving on the network. What workloads are these devices, sending or working with? What are the different protocols that this device is using to interact on the network, right? And once we have all the data, we can come back and correctly profile the device based on its behavior. And then once we know the behavior, we can also come back and say how this device should actually behave on the network. If it's deviating from its standard behavior, let me come back and recommend you a policy to stop and secure that device as we go through. Okay. Towards the bottom, you'll see all these different numbers, but obviously getting a lot of real-time security efficacy that are providing to our customers by using these new inline machine learning models. Okay, I'm going to give you some examples that what is this AI and ML and how does that work, right? And these are just like scratching the surface, but we have tons of other AI models. So if you look at this attack, this was classified as an emotet attack later. And what this attack did is that basically what the attacker did is that they got a hash and ran it on a sandbox. And then we confirmed that what model is working, right? Then what it is that they gave this malware a sample and a reference and shows that HTTP request when the machine is compromised. So you can see inside the request that there's an HTTP request coming in, and they're using that request to attack it. And it also shows the requests of the machine, how the request came in and when was this infected, right? And the things to note over here is that look at the URI. It is after the post event. It shouldn't be after the post event. Look at the host header over here. The host header is actually showing an IP address. It shouldn't be showing the IP address, right? So all these things can be detected by machine learning models. So what you see on the lower part of the slide that our ML kicked in, unable to launch these different machine learning models. And then we were able to classify that, hey, this is an exfiltration attempt by using an HTTP protocol. And our box on the right were able to detect it as a spyware. And we classified that as an embedded attack later on as well, right? Let me show you another example. So in this case, the attacker is using encryption. So all data is encrypted over SSL and then launching an attack, right? And then you might not have decryption turned on the box, which is fine, right? But even without turning on decryption, obviously the recommendation is to turn on decryption so you can see a lot more. But even without that, our ML kicked in and we saw a bunch of stuff. For example, it's using an insecure version of SSL. So it's using TLS 1.0. The SNI has some gibberish character in it, whereas SNI is basically server name identification, and it should be like a server, for example, if you're going to Yahoo or Google or whatnot, right? The certificate is self-signed with a really long validity, right? Again, that's a red flag right there, right? So just by looking at these high-level things through our machine learning, we're able to mark this as an exploitation attempt, and we're able to stop this for our customers. Okay. One last one. This was something that I'm pretty excited about. And when we saw this malware, we couldn't see it on VirusTotal and different websites for a number of days, right? And what's happening here is that the attacker is exploiting the GET request. And within the GET request, they're using a GET on this HTTP based server, changing the file name to 777, which is basically full permission. And then coming back, once they have full access, they're just attempting to exfiltrate this file by using a GET request, right? And then we're able to check this out. For example, look at this character. That doesn't look good. This is the injection attack which I've talked about, right? So, and then also the wget inside the GET request, red alarm right there, right? And based on that, we're able to classify this as an attack as well. And all these machine learning models kicked in on the right side and able to prevent these attacks for customers, right? So you can see that these advanced services that we're offering are baked in with a lot of AI and ML, and that's how you're actually protecting these services. Okay, I'm going to pick a little bit of speed because I have about 20 minutes left and a lot more content to cover. But let's talk about our innovations in web proxy and next-gen CASB. So if you look at a traditional web proxy architecture, it's complex. It's complex to deploy. And if you're thinking about, do I need it in transparent mode or in proxy mode where you're trying to bake in the authentication piece with it, it becomes very, very complex. And you end up deploying some third-party security devices as a DLP. You end up deploying a web proxy, a third-party device, and then you will still have your traditional firewall as a top-of-the-rack thing to protect against the internet, right? And these are the top proxy features. For example, looking for proxy, authentication, decryption, URL filtering, you're looking for antivirus, sandboxing, and reporting. And to put this architecture in place, it's a lot of effort just not to put in place, but also to manage it. And then what about your security platform? At the end, you want this to work for your branch, your mobile devices, your headquarter. And again, a lot of complexity comes in to route the traffic to the correct web proxy and make it happen. So it might be a lot of cost that gets associated to implement these architectures. But even with that, you'll end up with the inability to scale. You'll end up with having some security gaps inside the product. And then at the end, it might be a bad user experience because they might be routed to a proxy. They might land up on this white page that does nothing except to redirect and then all these different things. So what we're offering is a very, very simplified version to service both of these cases. The web proxy is supported right on the firewall itself. So we're not looking to do any routing changes, any other security compromise that we probably need to do, right? And also, when it's the same firewall, you can start decrypting on the firewall and encrypt again. So there's no decrypted traffic that ever hits the wire. It's always the encrypted traffic within the box and when it leaves the box, right? So super useful. And then when you look at these services that we talked about, advanced TP, advanced WildFire, advanced URL, you're getting the same level of security by implementing that into into the proxy use cases, and all these things that we talked about in terms of stopping these evasive attacks with AI demo, right? So again, very easy to deploy, works with both explicit proxy as well as transparent event proxy use cases with user authentication. And it's a modern way to actually go and implement proxy as we go through, right? We support inline decryption to prevent any unknown threats, and the packet is decrypted, processed, encrypted again, and then leaves the wire as encrypted, again, offering top-notch security for our customers. And the last benefit is that this is all, again, managed by the same platform, same centralized management console. So whatever you're using today to manage your next-gen firewalls, you're using the same centralized management console to now even support web proxy for your customers. Okay, CASB. Now, when I look at CASB, the whole security landscape has changed for the application. We're talking about a lot of SaaS applications. So you need a model that works with your SaaS application. If I, as an employee, go on, let's say, some website and start loading confidential documents, which are actually marked as confidential, could be a mistake, could be intentional, right? Am I able to go?
Progress.
Yes. So am I able to go and detect that, right? So that's possible today with our CASB architecture you talked about. Also, shadow ID use cases. So you have these applications which are running in your network, which are probably not commissioned by the ID, right? So there could be sanctioned application, there could be unsanctioned application, it could be tolerated application, which are running in your enterprise, but they are tolerated by IT because you need for day-to-day work, right? So all these different use cases are definitely handled by our shadow ID use cases. Then we have partner application that we work with to get the data and employ that, and also for any personal use application. So again, you can see the same network security platform that we talked about can offer next-gen CASB to our customers by just introducing as another subscription without any complex architecture changes, without any complex network deployment changes, you're able to deploy next-gen CASB within a few minutes on there. Okay, I'm going to step into AI Ops, which is something we're also very excited about. So when you look at AI Ops, what is it solving? At least for me, it's two big things that I look at. For example, let's take a quick example. We were all working from offices, tons of branches, many people in the office, and certainly we all have to go and shift and work from home, right? So the whole method of access changed, which means that probably a lot of us were dialing in through VPN or through some setup boxes or through some home firewall. They were probably doing a side-to-side VPN back to the headquarters, right, or whatnot. So in all these different use cases, how do you make sure that your offices, which are used to be 10 or 50 or 100, are now transformed into thousands of offices overnight? Uh, there are big problems. For example, how do you make sure that the security posture is still in place? Are all these different branches following the best practices configuration and best security that we offer to our customers, right? So how do you make sure that every appliance that I have is operating with the right level of security with the right configuration? Secondly, what about the ROI on the network, or what about the network availability, right? Can I actually go and predict that one of my firewall in a certain office or a branch office or a home office is now certainly getting some performance hit, right? And if I look at the CPU and memory, it's just getting filled drastically. Do we have the ability to go back and read all of that and come back and take an action, and not just take an action, take a proactive action, so I can actually prevent any outages, right? So these two are huge use cases as we go through, right? And AIOps solves both of these use cases. So it gives you a lot of ROI in terms of making sure that your security devices are running in the right security posture. And then also it's getting ahead of any network disruptions by making sure that if the security appliance is getting some high load, we're able to stop that. And then also if one of the office is not uh, uh, configured with the right configuration, we can come back and recommend you with the best practices policy as we go through, right? How does it work? Again, very simple to implement. Uh, we have a full AI ops console for next-gen firewall that can go and monitor your firewall and make sure your firewalls are running with the best practices, right? So we actually walk you through the ML predictions and anomaly in the network. We can guide you through the best practice recommendation. And this is huge for zero trust implementation. For example, if you have a policy authored that is not used for the last 30, 60, 90 days, we'll come back and flag it. What about a security rule that you're opening maybe 20 ports, but those 20 ports are never being used by any of the users? So again, if it's not being used, come back and just block them or remove them from security policies, right? So all of that is pretty much baked in with AI ops as we go through, right? And if you look towards the bottom, it's a huge benefit for ROI. You can see that like 65 billion metrics processed across the firewalls, we're able to stop like 24,000 misconfiguration and resolve them for our customers. We can find out 17,000 firewall health issues every month, right? As customers are adopting this technology, they're getting huge benefits out of it, right? So on the right, there are three main use cases. For example, strengthen security posture, prevent network security disruptions, and also achieve unified visibility threats. And I'll walk you into detail for these three use cases, and then Alfonso will show you a demo that how that works, right? But what's super important is that towards the left, it works across all our platform, hardware, VNC, and Panorama. It's very easy to deploy because it works with the same console to deploy on the firewall. All right, let's pick up the first use case. So if you look at today, if Mike is trying to implement, let's say, an overview and look at how my security configuration is looking on the network, it is very complex. And the question is, how do I ensure if I'm using all the features with the best practices? So Mike and his company are paying for these security features, for these advanced security features, but are they being used across their security architecture? Are they being used in the right fashion or the best practice fashion? We're not sure, right? Or Mike's not sure. So what you see towards the right, just by turning AI ops, we're able to give you visibility at a firewall level, at an office level, at a branch level, whatever you need, right? And you can see that, look at some, let's pick some of the red ones. So you have antivirus configured, so you're paying for antivirus. But if you look at your profile, only 25% of the policies are using these AV profiles, whereas 75% are not adopted, but they are applicable. They are eligible to adopt these, but they're not adopting it, right? So we can not only tell you the coverage, we can go back and point those security profiles, and we can come back and recommend you how to actually go enable these secret profiles, right? It's a huge benefit for our customers, right? Look at, for example, logging, which is also important for zero trust. You can see that only 50% of the logins are adopted, right? SSL forwarding looks good. So you're actually doing decryption, which is all green, and I can see that 89% of the policies are adopting decryption, right? And maybe those 10% are by design, because there might be some policies or .gov websites where you don't want to go and implement decryption. So we can also bring all the data up front and show it to you, right? Again, huge benefit for customers in terms of making sure that your network is following the best practice model and it's in the right security phase. And if you look, if I double click on one more site, like for example, let's click on advanced threat prevention, we can tell you that out of these 400 firewalls that you have on a very detailed view, 300 advanced TP licenses, 100 are configured, and 50 are following best practices, right? So you can get this high level view. And what it does is that it gives you the ROI detection. It gives you the planning exercise. It gives you anything you need to go and deploy these features at a high level. Okay, let's talk about the security strength and posture. So we talked about, yes, we can go back and tell you how it looks like, but we can do and go back and remediate these policies as well automatically, right? So on the left, you can see there are two rules, and the rule one is a shadow rule. And what it's doing is that basically Joe in marketing has access to legal application, but the second rule says block all marketing from access to legal application, right? Which means this was probably configured as an exception. Uh, due to some need, and then this exception was never taken off, right? So we can actually go and detect all of that and come back and recommend you how can you actually go fix it, right? So with now AOps might have visibility into what Joe has access to. We can come back and run these policy rules, correlation, shadow policies, and go and recommend you policies to go even fix it, right? Okay, let's talk about the second use case, which is basically proactively improve the overall firewall health. So on the left side, what you see is that uh, how am I impacted by this adversary? So there's a log4j came out, just take an example. Now customer is curious, or the admin is curious, or Mike is curious, right? That am I impacted by this log4j, right? And if I am or if I'm not, anyways, tell me the best version to upgrade to block me again, to safeguard me against this vulnerability. So through AIOps, we can go back and tell you what are the PCERT advisories, and given the version you're running on the enterprise, what is your vulnerability, landscape, and how can I actually fix it, right? And if you need to upgrade to a next version, we can guide you through that upgrade process as well and get your file upgraded, right? So again, making the whole process very, very simple in terms of deploying top-notch security, not just buying it, right? Okay, use case 3. Now what you're saying is that over here, just get a unified view of all the threats in your network as well. You can see that if I double click into threat prevention, uh, we have about, just looking at the malware, we're about to stop like 5,500 threats that were stopped, right? But out of these, there are about 700 threats which are allowed on the network, right? And this might be a policy misconfiguration. Maybe your policy is not authored in the right way to stop these malware. So you can click on that, look at these malware, and we come back and recommend you how to do that, right? So first of all, visibility. Once you have the visibility, then you can deploy all these advanced features to go back and safeguard against maximum security outcome for a customer. So we'll leave this slide as a reference, but you can see that this is like a lot of stuff that you get out of AI ops in terms of not just getting advanced security, but making sure that advanced security is in action and getting the ROI, what your customer paid for, and implement that security on that. Okay, I'm going to spend a few minutes on new hardware that came out as the 4th gen hardware lineup. Break it down to 3 pieces. On data center side, we have the 5440, which is 2 times the threat and decryption prevention in terms of performance. So what you were saying in the previous gen, this box is offering twice the protection for threat and decryption performance as compared to PA 5260, right? And then it's basically expanding this 5400 into 4 options in the portfolio. For large enterprise and branch and campus, we're happy to introduce 1420 and 1410, which are again giving you 5 times performance as compared to PA 800 and 7 times more the session capacity. And I'll give you some numbers just to compare from the previous gen, which are pretty high. And then it comes with the multi-gig power on PoE ports, which our customers were looking for to support their Wi-Fi and on all these different things, right? So they're baked into the platform as well. And they also come with the VSys, which was not there for, let's say, a P800. So you can go and deploy it for multiple next-gen firewall instances in the same box. On the enterprise band side, the small side, we're happy to introduce 415 and 445. And the big thing over here is that although the performance is similar to their previous gen, but they come with the fiber port and the PoE ports, which are very useful for our customers. So extend the fiber all the way to the branch, plug in PoE over there, and you're good to go, right? And this kind of expands our PA 400 to 6 options for our customers to deploy. Okay. Let's double click into the 5440, which is the 4th-gen platform. If you look at the rack unit, it's less rack units. So instead of 3U, now it's 2U. And as we said, the performance is twice as compared to 5260, right? Both threat and decryption. And then overall, it's increasing the performance by 35% just compared to 5430, which was the previous gen for 5440. Okay. All right, let's double click into the high performance medium branch platforms. As you can see that what's important is all these scaling numbers. So look at the session count, 1.4 million on a 1420 and about a million on 1410, right? So that's very high as compared to the PA 820, which was 128,000 versus 190,000 on PA 850, right? Definitely giving a lot of options. And then it comes with an optional second power supply that makes the whole thing more deployable and easy. I'll leave the right side because we talked almost all of that in the previous slide, but that's just double clicking the numbers. For example, 10G SFP ports. And then again, on 1420, there are 10 total ports or 22 ports. So we're getting 10 additional ports. So less RU, a lot more compute, a lot more performance, and then a lot of ports as well in the platform. Okay, let's double click into the small branch 415 or 405 PF1 series. We talked about 445 and 415 that are introducing the PoE ports and the optional second power supply for both of these platforms, right? And then if you compare to the previous gen, the session count is pretty high, right? For example, 3,000 sessions on a PA4 450, and then on a 410 like 64 session. So again, a huge benefit for customers to extend security with the same security platform to all these different branches. So this kind of completes our 4th-gen offering to our customers across the board for branches, for network perimeter, and for data centers. So all the boxes are pretty much available in the 4th-gen model that we talked about with advanced AI and ML, as we discussed in the previous sections. Okay, so this is the kitchen sink of the whole release that came out. And you can see there's tons of other innovation, not just the one that I talked about, right? I would actually really recommend looking at the INT portfolio, which is offering huge benefit for our customers in terms of adopting to zero trust architecture to lead with. Because most of these zero trust are leading with identity. And once you have INT figured out with the right model, it's very easy to start adding applications, workloads, CASB, web proxy, everything we talked about, leading with INT-based policies, because everything then becomes context aware and you're following zero trust models, right? Check out DNS security, check out hybrid SWIG, next-gen CASB, and tons of other things that are part of that. I ran out of time in terms of covering 5G security, but definitely we can send you links that talks into details about those tools as well. Okay. So let's see what is the consolidation that our customers are getting. So look at all these capabilities, which are almost a requirement to implement next-gen security these days. Most of the customers will deploy point solution because not one vendor offers all of that into one single platform. And that's why you end up with complexity. You end up with multiple consoles that limits your options to not only deploy best security, but to maintain best security. What you saw today is that with our Palo Alto Networks platform, we can cover all of these security needs to the same security platform that I showed you earlier, right? And as you expand into SD-WAN use cases, cloud use cases, XDR use cases, all that is covered by a different platform, and you saw most of that today, right? If you look at the analyst validation, we are leaders straight 11 times, even this year, in the Magic Quadrant for next-gen firewall. So we have been leading that. And even tons of validation from Forrester. You can see that we're on top right for the Forrester Enterprise Wave, which is basically focused a lot on zero trust principles. So what are the key takeaways? We talked about all these advanced technologies that are part of NOAA. We touched upon advanced WildFire, advanced threat prevention, web proxy, next-gen CASB, and also AI ops. We talked about the fourth gen platform and how these introducing these new platforms kind of covers all the different architectures for our customers to deploy next-gen security using fourth gen platform across the board. Okay. And if you look at the availability, yes, everything was released in November 2022, 11.0, and the new hardware came out by mid-December in 2022. And I would recommend to check out this launch event, which actually walks you through some of these details as well that I talked about, and even covering more. Okay. So with that, I'll pass it on to Almas to walk us through a demo for advanced WildFire and other separation on CDSS.
Thanks, Imran. Let me start